Tommy Rees went down defending a player. Kevin Stefanski lost his job with a 5-31, and in the middle of it all stood Jimmy Haslam, no longer tolerating a culture that shielded underperformance while failing it. The line was crossed when Rees and Stefanski backed Jeudy's actions over Shedeur Sanders, and Haslam responded with finality. What might have looked like a personnel decision was, in reality, a defensive direction, an unmistakable message that the Browns would no longer compromise on their quarterback's growth or their vision for the future.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
This isn't just about replacing names on the coaching staff. It's about rebuilding from the ground up with clarity. Gruden's arrival promises a complex, tailored offense designed to harness Sanders' true potential, while Schwartz delivers defensive for a franchise desperate to move past years of sabotage, outdated strategies, and missed opportunities. This is a necessary transformation. Haslam's play is bold, placing Shedeur not just at the center of the offense, but at the center of a brand new Browns. Jimmy Haslam just flipped the switch, and now Cleveland is in full reset mode. The Browns didn't quietly part ways with Kevin Stefanski and Tommy Rees. They weren't shown the door after a disappointing stretch. No, Haslam pulled the trigger, publicly, decisively. And in doing so, he sent the clearest message this franchise has seen in years. Mediocrity is done. Excuses are done. Coddling the wrong players? Absolutely done. And what sparked the final blow? A collision of bad football, worse management, and a franchise quarterback getting the cold shoulder from his own coaching staff. The breaking point wasn't just about losing games. It was about losing control. You don't spend the draft capital, the PR muscle, and the brand momentum on a player like Shedeur Sanders, only to bury him under a stale offense and a locker room culture that doesn't prioritize him. But that's exactly what was happening. And when Jeudy became the flashpoint, when the coaching staff publicly defended him in a dispute that cast Sanders in the shadows, it wasn't just tone deaf. It was Haslam watched his franchise prioritize a volatile wide receiver over the quarterback who was supposed to be the future. And in a league where optics matter just as much as outcomes, that was the final straw. Stefanski and Rees didn't just get fired because of losses. They got fired because they backed the wrong narrative, because they doubled down on a coaching identity that had already proven ineffective, outdated, and creatively bankrupt, because they made the Browns' offense so vanilla, so stripped of complexity, that evaluating Shedeur's true ceiling became impossible. And when your entire organization is tied to the success of that quarterback, both on the field and at the business level, you don't let that kind of mistake continue. That's why this wasn't just a coaching change. It was a complete teardown, a strategic pivot with a long-term plan. Enter John Gruden and Jim Schwartz. No soft resets. No interim placeholders. Haslam went straight to veteran leadership. Straight to names with deep NFL pedigrees. Because the time for experiments and half measures was over. John Gruden steps in as offensive coordinator, and love him or hate him, the man knows how to scheme an NFL offense. His playbooks aren't basic. His quarterback development track record speaks volumes. And he's never been afraid to shake things up to build a system around his guy. That's exactly what Shedeur needs right now. Not another season of screen passes and safe third down calls, but a legitimate, dynamic offense designed for him. Because the problem with the Browns' offense under Stefanski and Rees wasn't just lack of production. It was lack of identity. It was predictable, simplistic, totally unsuited for evaluating a quarterback who thrives when the system gives him options, flexibility, and trust. Haslam knew that couldn't continue. Not if Sanders was going to succeed. Not if fans were going to buy into the future. And not with a brand new stadium looming on the horizon. That's the other piece of this, marketability. This wasn't just about winning games. This was about building a team that sells. That generates excitement, sells jerseys, moves tickets, and brings in national attention. And right now, Shedeur Sanders is at the center of all of that. The Browns aren't just betting on him as a quarterback. They're betting on him as a brand. A face of the franchise who can finally lift Cleveland out of its reputation as a revolving door of failed QBs and wasted talent. But to unlock that potential, they had to cut out the system that was holding him back. Gruden brings the tools. He brings the complexity. He brings the ability to build a quarterback-first offense that fits Sanders instead of forcing him to adapt to a broken scheme. On the other side of the ball, Jim Schwartz steps in as head coach, and his job is clear. Reinforce the defense, stabilize the locker room, and bring professionalism back to a team that's been riddled with drama and underachievement. Schwartz knows defense. That's never been in question. And with the Browns unit that already has talent, he's not walking into a rebuild. He's walking into an opportunity to turn Cleveland's defense into a top-tier group while the offense finally gets its act together. Together, Gruden and Schwartz form the kind of veteran leadership duo that doesn't make excuses. They don't play politics. And they're not here to keep old loyalties alive. They're here to win. Because what Haslam saw over the past season wasn't just bad football. It was bad structure. It was foundational dysfunction. Coaching decisions that not only sabotaged player development, but clashed with the very vision Haslam had for the team. A vision that was built around Shedeur's development, star power, and long-term viability. And if that vision was going to survive, the coaching staff had to go. The offense under Stefanski and Rees had become so rudimentary that scouts couldn't even properly assess. Sanders. That's not just a system problem, it's a franchise failure. You don't spend years trying to land a quarterback of the future only to handcuff him with play calls that belong in a high school game plan. Haslam knew it. He didn't just see it on the field, he saw it in the stands, in the merchandise sales, in the media buzz that never arrived. And most of all, he saw it in the locker room dynamic, where Shedeur wasn't being treated like the future, but like a question mark. And when the coaching staff sided with Jeudy, that sent a message that the future wasn't safe. That no matter how much potential Shedeur had, he wasn't being protected. He wasn't being prioritized. And he definitely wasn't being developed the way a franchise quarterback should be. That's not just bad optics, that's bad business. Because in this league, your quarterback is your business. Especially when you're building toward a new stadium. When you're trying to grow your fan base. When you're turning your quarterback into the face of your franchise's rebrand. Everything depends on getting that quarterback right. That's why Haslam didn't wait. Whether the season was over or not, it didn't matter. The changes had to happen immediately or not. They were inevitable. The internal sabotage? Done. The defensive mindset that protected veterans at the expense of development? Finished. The conservative offense that handcuffed one of the most hyped QB prospects in recent memory? Over. This was about setting a new tone. One where the team finally moves in one direction, where coaches aren't operating with divided agendas, and where the quarterback is finally given the tools, trust, and system he needs to lead. Because for the Browns, this isn't just a roster shuffle. It's a cultural reset, a signal that Cleveland is finally done spinning its wheels. Haslam is all in on Shedeur. He's all in on reshaping this franchise around a modern, developmental, marketable identity. One that can sell tickets, fill a new stadium, and actually compete at a high level. And he's not waiting around for people who don't get it to catch up. The team now belongs to Sanders, Gruden, and Schwartz. And whether you agree with the hires or not, it's clear that there's finally a plan. A real one. One that prioritizes development, complexity, and accountability. So what's next? That depends entirely on how fast this new regime can bring the vision to life. The pressure is real. The spotlight is hot. And the stakes have never been higher. But after years of limping through seasons without direction, the Browns finally picked a lane. Now it's your turn. What do you think about the changes? Was Haslam right to pull the trigger when he did? Do you trust this coaching staff to unlock Shedeur's potential? And is this finally the moment Cleveland stops being a punchline and starts being a problem? Drop your take in the comments, like if you're riding this roller coaster of chaos, and subscribe if you're ready to follow the rest of this rebuild in real time. Because one thing's for sure, whatever happens next, it won't be. So here we are, Cleveland, standing at the edge of another turning point. But this time, it's not just talk. Jimmy Haslam didn't suggest a new direction. He forced one. The way he tore down the old coaching regime, abruptly, unapologetically, wasn't just a wake-up call for Browns fans. It was a warning shot across the league. This franchise isn't content being a cautionary tale anymore. And Haslam? He's not here to politely wait for things to click. He wants results. He wants relevance. And most importantly, he wants Shedeur Sanders fully activated. Because that's what this is all about. The Browns' success hinges on whether or not Sanders becomes the guy. Not just a solid starter. Not just another name in the post-Baker Mayfield graveyard of Cleveland quarterbacks. He needs to be the brand. The reason this team gets primetime slots, national merch sales, and respect. And under Kevin Stefanski, that vision was suffocating. Let's not sugarcoat it. Shedeur was being completely misused. You can't draft a quarterback with a college resume like Sanders, plaster his face all over your off-season hype videos, and then stick him in a predictable, underwhelming offensive system that doesn't allow him to throw past 10 yards. That's not just a bad scheme, that's actively stunting development. The offense wasn't evolving. It wasn't dynamic. It was built like a safety net, not a launching pad. And Shedeur? He was being held hostage by it. Every game felt like a repeat of the last. Quick reads, obvious routes, a run game that defenses stopped respecting by week 3. There was no growth, no creativity, no progression. And when that's the environment around your star quarterback, it's not just bad football. It's organizational malpractice. Which brings us back to Haslam. He didn't just fire Stefanski and Rees because they lost games. He fired them because they were losing time. The most valuable currency when developing a franchise QB. Every week Sanders was stuck in that offense was a week lost in his progression. A week wasted in a league that moves fast and forgets even faster. And then came the Jeudy moment. This wasn't just a locker room scuffle. It was the lit match. When the coaching staff chose to publicly back Jeudy, despite growing whispers of friction and growing frustrations about the offense, it proved what many feared. Sanders wasn't being protected. Not on the field. Not in the playbook. Not in the media. Segment. How are you going to preach team-first culture and then turn your back on the player who's supposed to be the future of your franchise? If you're Shedeur Sanders and you see that, how do you trust the system you've been dropped into? Haslam saw the writing on the wall. And he acted. What's wild is how rare that kind of decisive action is in the NFL. Most owners wait. They hesitate. They let things rot from the inside because change is uncomfortable and public firings are messy. But Haslam didn't flinch. He understood that this wasn't just about fixing a team. It was about saving the narrative. Because the Browns were dangerously close to fumbling the Shedeur Sanders era before it even got off. That's where Jon Gruden comes in. Say what you want about the man, there's plenty to say, but when it comes to quarterbacks, he doesn't mess around. He lives and breathes offense. His systems are complex, aggressive, and tailored. He doesn't mold QBs into his system. He molds the system around them. And that's exactly what Shedeur needs. An offensive coordinator who will build with him, not hand him a clipboard and ask him to manage. Under Gruden, Sanders won't be limited to short throws and conservative checkdowns. He's going to be pushed, tested, and actually developed into the NFL-level quarterback people know he can be. Finally, he'll be evaluated in a real system. One where his arm instincts and IQ can be showcased, not. And while Gruden crafts the offense, Jim Schwartz will be reinforcing the culture. The Browns' defense wasn't the problem this year. The unit has real talent, but it was often left hanging by an offense that couldn't sustain drives, couldn't protect leads, and couldn't shift momentum. Schwartz's job isn't to reinvent the wheel. His job is to tune it to perfection, to take what's already working and give it a hardened identity. But maybe more importantly, Schwartz provides structure, discipline, accountability, and with a locker room that just went through a high-profile divide between coaches and QB, that's critical. This pairing, Gruden and Schwartz, wasn't just strategic in football terms. It was strategic in optics, in tone, in hierarchy. These are two veteran coaches who know how to command respect, who won't allow the kind of internal sabotage that cost Stefanski his job. Because yes, let's call it what it was, sabotage. Whether it was intentional or not, the decisions made by the previous regime, ignoring Sanders' needs, empowering players like Jeudy, refusing to evolve the playbook, undermined everything the organization claimed it was building. And when you do that under the spotlight of a new stadium and a supposed franchise revival, it's not just a bad look, it's fatal. Haslam made it clear. He's not letting the past drag this franchise down any longer. He's not letting outdated coaching mentalities stunt the growth of one of the most marketable quarterbacks the Browns have had in years. He's cutting the cord, cleaning house, and building something new from the inside out. And make no mistake, this is just the beginning. This overhaul isn't just about 2025. It's about creating a sustainable foundation. One where the offense is built to highlight its stars, not neuter them. One where the culture doesn't protect veterans at the expense of the future. One where the quarterback is actually treated like a leader, not an inconvenience. It's a cultural reset, a football reset, a business reset. Because yes, the business side matters. The new stadium isn't just a place to play. It's a project, an investment. It's ticket sales, sponsorships, merchandise, citywide buy-in. And none of that works without a team that performs and excites. That's where Shedeur Sanders comes in. And that's why this entire franchise is now built around him. Which means every decision moving forward will be viewed through one lens. Does this help Shedeur develop into the star we need him to be? The answer under Stefanski and Rees was a hard no. But under Gruden and Schwartz, Haslam is betting big that the answer changes, and fast. And if it doesn't, if the new hires don't deliver, if Shedeur still stalls out, then it's all on Haslam. Because when you clear house this aggressively, when you fire a staff midstream and rebuild the coaching tree from scratch, you own the outcome, good or bad. But right now, this isn't about fear. This is about ambition. For once, Cleveland isn't waiting for things to fall apart. They're building to prevent it. So here's the real question. Was this the move that finally changes everything for the Browns? Or are we watching another desperate reset dressed up as strategy? There's no sugarcoating this anymore. Cleveland is officially all in. No more hedging bets. No more wait and see development arcs. Jimmy Haslam made the kind of seismic move that rips up the old blueprint and throws it straight in the shredder. And the pressure? It's suffocating. Because here's the reality. With Shedeur Sanders as the centerpiece, this is no longer a typical NFL rebuild. This is a high-stakes rebrand on the field, in the media, and in the wallet. A new stadium is around the corner, and every financial projection tied to it assumes one thing. That Sanders is the face of a franchise on the rise, not another footnote in a long list of Cleveland what-ifs. And let's be honest, there have been plenty of what-ifs. What if Baker had panned out? What if the Odell experiment didn't implode? What if the analytics era under Andrew Berry and Stefanski had actually produced an elite offense instead of a risk-averse, algorithm-driven snooze fest? But Haslam's done asking what if. He's forcing what's next. Gruden and Schwartz were not brought in to babysit this team. They weren't hired to ease into anything. This was a move born from urgency. Because while the rest of the league evolves offensively, the Browns have been stuck in neutral. And when you're trying to build around a quarterback like Shedeur Sanders, neutral is the enemy. You can't sell hope with a high school offense. You can't develop a star when the system is designed to protect itself from failure instead of pushing for success. And you can't convince a fan base to show up week after week if they know they're getting 3-yard outs and missed deep ball opportunities on third and the Stefanski era. It died by 1,000 checkdowns. And once Sanders arrived, the flaws became glaring. This wasn't just about a bad game plan. It was about a bad philosophy. One that played scared. One that prioritized ball control over player growth. One that cared more about avoiding headlines than earning them. And the tipping point, the moment the locker room fracture became undeniable, was the decision to back Jeudy when things got tense. Whether it was ego, internal politics, or just bad judgment, it made one thing crystal clear. Shedeur wasn't the one being backed by. And if you're Jimmy Haslam, Watching that unfold in real time? Watching your supposed franchise QB get sidelined emotionally by the very people who are supposed to develop him? You don't wait. You act. You rip the cord before the damage becomes irreversible. So what happens now? This is where it gets real. There's no more cloak of plausible deniability. Everyone knows this team lives and dies by how well Sanders plays. And that means this new regime has to hit the ground running. No grace period. No, give it time. The spotlight is already on. Gruden has to build a real NFL offense around Sanders, fast. The kind that maximizes his mobility, arm strength, and field vision. The kind that isn't afraid to throw deep, move fast, and challenge defenses. The kind that doesn't insult the intelligence of fans who've been watching this team spin its wheels for years. Meanwhile, Schwartz has to do more than just manage the defense. He has to reset the culture, reinforce discipline, strip out the lingering entitlement from players who thought they were untouchable under the last regime. There's no more hiding behind veteran status or locker room politics. You perform or you move on. Because now the Browns are a quarterback first team, whether the players like it or not. And it's about time. Cleveland has spent far too long pretending its QBs were just another part of the system. That's over. The NFL has changed. Quarterbacks are the system. They're the brand, the broadcast package, the centerpiece of every storyline. And Haslam's finally playing by those rules. Shedeur gets the keys to the franchise. Not just on paper, but in practice. And for fans, there's hope. Because for the first time in a long time, the chaos feels intentional. The shakeup isn't desperation, it's design. It's a team finally aligning its football operations with its business ambitions. It's not perfect. It might not even work. But it finally feels like there's a plan. So what do you think? Is this the version of the Browns that finally gets it right? Will Sanders thrive under Gruden? Can Schwartz hold the defense and the culture together? Or is this just another bold move that leads straight to heartbreak? Let us know what you're thinking. Drop a comment if you've been watching this franchise self-destruct and rebuild too many times to count. Hit that like button if you're cautiously optimistic. And subscribe if you're ready to ride this storm all the way through. Because Cleveland just lit the fuse, and now we get to watch what explodes.